let's start.
Okay, so Peter, are you ready?
Yes, we can start right away. So, as a short introduction, Be.Cultour is one of these great joint activities in Europe, where we do not only look into tourism, where we do not only look into culture as an important component of tourism, but it's also an activity where we try to integrate modern research designs and options like digital twins and digital technology, so as to get a better understanding of the ins and outs of culture in relation to tourism. And as we know, culture is a very broad concept. It has to do with the mindset of people. It has to do with history. It also has to do with archaeology, for instance. And therefore, for this webinar, we have decided to compose a program where we would put together some of the more recent findings in the Be.Cultour activity as a result also of our joint cooperation with our partners all over Europe. And that means that for today, we'll of course look into some essential questions at the interface of tourism and culture. But for the actual presentation, we have some sort of 3 to 4 different speakers who will all give a short introduction. One of them will be myself, just as an introduction speech, so as to outline where we are, what the aims are, and so on. And we give a short outline also the Be.Cultour state of affairs at this moment. In fact, that also has been instigated very much by Antonia, who is with us, and she has been a driving force behind. But today we will also continue along different lines. We will show to a broader audience the partners, but also several others from all over Europe. We will also outline what are the possibilities, the opportunities of digital technology in understanding the interface of culture and tourism. That means that after my short introduction, Henk Scholten, who is one of the international renowned experts in the field of digital technology and geoscience, he will give a short introduction on the question, what does it all mean? What does a digital twin mean for us? But also what are other digital devices meaning? What are the meaning for our work? Then after this more general short introduction, we will get Ineke, who's also with us. Ineke is an expert also in the field of digital technology and planning and spatial planning. And she will report on, as a way of illustration, she will report on the work we have been doing in the southern part of the Netherlands, in the province of Limburg, in particular the city of Heerlen and Parkstad, where digital technology has been applied so as to understand the historical construction of and the current opportunities of culture in relation to tourism. And she will give us a splendid presentation of where we are at this moment and all the new opportunities offered by digital technology. We have almost finished now the digital twin for the whole area as part of the Be.Cultour project, so it is also a learning model for others. We had to go through all the stages, and now I'm very happy we can share this with all of you. And then finally, we get Maurice. Maurice is also with us, and Maurice has he comes essentially from not only from the field of digital technology and spatial sciences, but also from archaeology. And we were very happy then when we had our discussion with our colleagues from Basilicata, who also wanted to build some sort of a digital twin for the area, that we came in contact with Maurice, who has done extensive research on one of the key arteries in southern Italy, i.e. the Via Appia. And he knows more about the Via Appia than any Italian person would know. And he has investigated almost every brick on the long Via Appia, starting from Rome until Brindisi. And we have a fantastic example now of a most sophisticated digital twin, including all the archaeological, historical information, which can again be another learning model for all of us and which can also drive the future of our work. Having said this, by way of introduction, then maybe we could go very quickly through a few slides and then immediately we give the floor through Karima, who will be the convener, to Henk Scholte. So, as I said already before, Be.Cultour is also not only on culture and tourism, but it's also on the digital tools which can be developed. And our task from the Netherlands has been to select and identify a database and key performance indicators so as and to treat them in a digital form so as to show the potential of digital technology and getting a better understanding of circular cultural tourism. So here's the overarching goal of Be.Cultour. Well, that's nothing new because this is what all brings us together all over Europe, and we all have been working on it. And there are very specific objectives, which I'm not going to read all of them, but as you know, in any big EU project, you need to have objectives. But here, in fact, this scheme is more important because it's some sort of a cascadic approach. They say we start with the data, we have an analytical key box and toolbox, and of course, then we have to visualize this in terms of mapping, and especially nowadays in terms of 3D mapping and digital twins. And of course, this is not only a nice exercise, but it ought to be used also for policy purposes. So on the right-hand side, you see all kinds of types of dashboards, which can be used for sustainability and tourism policy, sustainable cultural policy, etc. So this is in fact the flow. Here you find the scheme, the integrative scheme, which we have been developing in cooperation with Antonia and others, how to link the circular performance of tourist destinations to the digital data available, and how can we simulate ex post or ex ante the developments which have taken place or are taking place in different tourist destinations. So from that perspective, we have several pilot regions in Europe. They all have different databases. They have, of course, all different concerns, but there are certain common elements, and we have tried to identify the structure of these common elements so that we can work together based on a framing of our work, not only for the Netherlands, but also from Italy and Sweden, etc., so that we can bring together all our knowledge. And in our final report, and Antonia is hard working on this, we can disseminate our knowledge so that also in the future, digital technology will become an integral part of culture and tourism policy. We need, of course, a lot of data. This is a simple scheme of the structure of the database. Again, following decomposition approaches, a data set is not a data lake where everything is put in big containers. No, we need a data warehouse which systematically organizes the data. Otherwise, we cannot make sense out of millions and billions of data. So this has been a major issue, of course, in the Be.Cultour project, and gradually, I think, we get now to a very clear understanding, which we will further report on at the major final conference of Be.Cultour in Napoli in June later on this year. Just to give you a simple example of where we are, here we have the mirror region, Heerlen-Parkstad. Heerlen is a city in the southern part of the Netherlands, close to Germany and Belgium. A rich historical place, which has all kinds of interesting history, starting with the Roman period. The Romans have had a big impact on this area and also on building up the city. It also used to have a Roman name, even as the city. Gradually now we want to unfold more or less the history of this city in terms of different layers. We have a Roman period, a medieval period, we have an industrial period, post-industrial, etc., etc. And all these periods have left traces behind in the city. And these are different layers, and of course it's then very interesting not only to map out these layers, but also to visualize them by means of digital twins, which we have done, and Ineke will later on report on this. But we will also be able to indicate how important this is for tourist behavior, because people might have an interest in the Roman period, others in post-industrial periods, and they can virtually and physically go through all the layers of the city and its rich culture. So we have to look into what are then the X factors for policy in that area, to look into the accessibility, to modal choice, what kind of tourists, etc. So it brings us back into the heart of Be.Cultour. So at the end of the day, we will be able to come up with a framing of the questions, the policy questions, using not only digital technology, but also other quantitative techniques from social surveys like Q analysis. We have written a whole report on Q analysis, and these findings are also available. We know much more about the travel experiences and the sustainability conditions in destination areas. So all these things have been mapped out, and those of you who have an interest, of course, can also ask us for a digital version of our reports. All kinds of statistical techniques, not only Q analysis, but also multivariate factor analysis, etc., have been applied. Then a second, next to the digital twin analysis, we have used what is called a data envelopment analysis, which means that we are able also to look into the different efficiencies of different options for the future. And data envelopment analysis around the current modern techniques, which allows us to look into what are the most efficient ways for building up tourist policies. And we have done this for all the partners in Europe cooperating with us. There's another report, and those of you who have an interest in it, of course, they can easily have access to it. So we can look into the question, what are the driving forces which create the efficiency also in terms of sustainable and circular development of cities? And that's why we have adopted some novel approaches in the DA, the data envelopment analysis. So it also means that there is quite some interesting difference between tourist regions in Europe. Even despite the heterogeneity, we can rescale all the outcomes, and that at the end leads then to an answer to the question, which ones of the pilot regions and the mirror regions are doing rather well in terms of circularity and sustainability objectives. And so this has been extensively now documented and even published in some recent papers. So all in all, I think we are gradually now coming to the end. We have been able, together with in close cooperation with all our partners all over Europe, and of course together with the team which you have seen already, and they will of course present now their work. We have done quite some interesting work where, let's say, certain soft things, we think they are soft, like culture and tourism and archaeology and history, we are able to map them out in more quantitative terms with a deep digital technology component. And I think this type of interaction between different disciplines is, of course, a very important new direction in the field of and research on culture and history and tourism. And having said this, I think I will stop here. Karima, you are the convener, because after me we will listen to Henk Scholte, and he's burning to tell his stories about the digital twin and the digital opportunities. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your introduction and also a short overview Yeah, okay, everybody. Yes, thank you, Peter. Short overview. So I would like now to continue with the next speaker, Henk Scholte from the Netherlands. Henk, the floor is yours. Your time is till 10:35. So go ahead. Thank you.
I don't see a clock, but I trust you.
Absolutely.
Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to be here in the northern part of the Netherlands, being aware that some of you are in Italy and always have the feeling that as a tourist, you immediately want to go to that part of Europe. So that gives an answer on the question of Peter, what is driving you as a tourist? Before answering that, I'd like to discuss together with you what's happening regarding our society and especially what's called the digitally transformed society. So I will come with some examples, but I hope you will see the red line through the story. And at the end, my colleagues will come with examples of that. I'm a geographer by profession. I'm also a mathematician, but I like to use always the maps. So next slide, please. Because in this slide, you see immediately the evolution which is going on regarding spatial information. Because as a tourist, you're interested in spatial information. Of course, price is always playing a role, but I'm telling this because Peter is an economist. So true. But spatial information has played a crucial role through the centuries. So when I look to Alkmaar, that's the city where I live now, then you already have maps in the 17th century, and there was even a production of maps. And that's not because maps and map making is an art, it's also a piece of science, but it is also a piece of information. It's clear that the Netherlands could never have conquered the world without their maps. I mean, when you are sailing in the Netherlands, then you are aware that at the moment you're leaving our country, you have to pass some islands, and that's almost impossible. It's impossible because of the fact that the depths of the sea on these parts of the world is just a couple of I would say centimeters. It's about a meter, and then of course it depends on the tide. So a lot of all these wonderful ships going to the east or wherever they went could not pass their own country. They needed information. And they want to have information, not just, let's say, on their own country, but of all possible, let's say, trips they want to make. So map making became a profession, and maps were expensive because they were representing spatial information. At the same moment, people were starting to talk about standards because you want to combine the data from, let's say, Asia and the Netherlands. Can you put it together? And how do you put it together? So you have a globe, but the map is flat. So how do you flatten a globe? There's standards, projection methods, and it all started, let's say, in the 16th century. Then I'm jumping to the century, it's called the 20th century, because there the digitalization really took place. And that means that we were talking about data not only in a printed form, but in a digital form. And we gave it a name, Geographical Information Systems. I remember I went to the United States in '84, and there I heard about something new, GIS. We did not know that word in the Netherlands and also not in Italy, but some people in the United States has discovered, let's say, this abbreviation of Geographical Information Systems. So we started in the 80s in Europe using this kind of environments for the digitalization of our maps. No, I mean, that would be the wrong approach because the map is already a model and we first want to have data. So the GIS was there for bringing the data together. And then, of course, you can also make maps out of it. But that's an abstraction. And now we are jumping to, let's say, our century. And it means that I'm using a new word, digital twins. I was happy that Peter was using it already a couple of times. Perhaps it was better when I had put SEMBER in between the abbreviation of SDI, Spatial Data Infrastructure. because it's clear when we want to bring all this data together, we need an infrastructure. And the SDIs were invented in the 90s and implemented, especially in Europe, by the European Commission. And the standard is called Inspire. Inspire were all the countries of Europe promising each other that data will be accessible and will be standardized and will be collected and will be accessible. So that's a big step. And these SDIs are the source for our digital twins. So now I'm going to that step of a digital twin. It's a vision. So it's not a product. You cannot buy it. You can develop it and you can work together on developing it. And that's, of course, what we are going to do and are started to do here in Europe, but everywhere. So it's, first of all, it has to be a digital replica of the current state. And the current state can be a city. It can also be a house. It can also be a bridge. So in all these cases, we are bringing together the data which are representing the object. And bringing together the data means a lot of data with a high precision or a little bit less data, still the same feeling. But the big reason that we came with this new abstraction of digital twins is the fact that we have too much data. That's first of all related to sensors, because we are collecting so much information. So the question is, how do we keep structure? How do we make it accessible? And how can we use it for understanding how an object is behaving, is developing? And developing can mean the planning of a country. It can also mean driving of a car. But it is all related to the fact that we hope that we are able to conquer, let's say, the present world. And by conquer, I mean that we can compete with all the real, let's say, problems we have at this moment, like, for instance, climate change. So how do we do that? What would be the best decision to make? Next step. It is important that we have what we call an architecture, so that we can explain to each other how we are developing a digital twin. Again, it's not a product. It's based on a huge amount of data. So that's the important basic fundament of every digital twin. Then the data itself is changing in the way that we are now also able to handle 3D. That means the subsurface, we can go down and we can go up. That was not possible with a flat map, but it is possible, of course, with the digital information. And that means that the replica is much more, let's say, like the real world. What we hope to have is what we call open data. Open data means that the data is freely available for everybody. And we have policies in the United States, but also in the Netherlands. We hope to have them in Europe, where all the data is freely available. And that means that you can use the data for bringing it together, the integration. And secondly, to start your modeling applications, because as a scientist, we all know that the most difficult part is predicting. So are we able to have models which can simulate the behavior of an object? Also part of the architecture is the fact that we have to manage the whole. So we need a data service management. We have to be sure that it is also available tomorrow. We have to be sure that it is secure, because we know that people are not always as friendly as we hope, even also in the digital world. So hacking was a new word. And then the end, and that's of course the most sexy part of the whole digital twinning, is the viewing. And the viewing can be a viewer on the web, but it can also be a kind of glasses, where you can have your glasses and walk through the virtual world. Whatever we know from the gaming industry is also part of the digital twinning environment. Bringing it together, a digital twin is not that easy, depending, of course, on your purposes. It's really big data. So your laptop is too small to do it all on the laptop. The scales, because scale is always a very important, let's say, word when you talk about geography. The scales are infinity. And I mean, no, I will give some examples of that. That's much better. And what we hope to do is, of course, to share it. That you can have access to our digital twin after this session. So that everybody can work with it and can use it for their own purposes. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, it's all in the cloud. Without any discussion. I give you an example of a digital twin, an unexpected one perhaps.
Life happens, emotions happen, because as humans, we all feel joy, sadness, and frustration. And those emotions travel with us. They can affect how we drive, for better or for worse, and they can impact our safety. We want to help people become better drivers by being there when they're not at their very best. In just a few
I'm sure the movie will go on and you will hear the sound, but I will tell you what you see.
format LiDAR, the start of a new era of electrification, technology, and safety. All Volvo EX90s will come with an invisible shield of safety, a unique combination of the latest technology powered by the understanding of the car's outside environment and the state of the driver inside.
Now this is important. He's talking about the outside and the inside. I will also come back on
You
that.
struggle with the kids at breakfast, or maybe it's just one of those days where everyone is on a different wavelength. Well, like any other day, you continue. You go to work, to school, to the gym, hopefully on track after a good night's sleep. But sometimes we wake up not as refreshed as we'd like, or life distracts us. Stress is a fact of life, and the unexpected is a fact of life too. Out of the billions of seconds that we drive in a lifetime, our reaction to an accident comes down to just a few. At that point, experience might not be enough. And that's when our next generation safety will be there to help keep you and your loved ones safe. The safety standard in the EX90.
So let's stop here, because what have we seen in this short introduction? Of course, a new car. It means that the world is changing. An electric car, because we are talking about an electric car, did not exist at all. That means that at the moment you're developing a new car, you're also thinking about, let's say, the new components of the car. And the new components are closely connected also what we were just explaining about digital twinning. So what you would like to have as a car driver is a digital twin around you. A digital twin which tells you what's happening on the road. A digital twin which tells you what you can expect, let's say within a few hundred meters. It can also be a few kilometers when you're talking about planning. So when you plan your road to Italy and you want to know where you can get electric fuel, then it will tell you that. But in this example, it shows you that there is something happening on the road, which you cannot perhaps see by yourself, but the instruments which are on the car and which will be explained later by Maurice, because we use them also on the Via Appia, these instruments are giving data, a lot of data. And they are doing that every millisecond. So the whole virtual world is inside the car. I mean, inside the instruments of the car. And these instruments are able to handle all this data. And what is nice, it's all, let's say, geography. It's all X, Y, and Z coordinates. And the time coordinate, because time is of the essence. And it's able to provide the driver with the right information. So from data, I'm now talking about information. So modeling has taken place. And then something extra, it's also measuring, let's say, the status of the driver. Has he slept well? Is he looking carefully? Is he, let's say, able to handle unexpected moments fast enough? And otherwise, the car takes over. Then he takes the decision what to do. This goes quite far. True. And it's not just Volvo. These are all the electric cars at this moment which are going in this direction. And it, of course, it's not just cars. You can also talk about the military and what's happening there. But I think it's a nice example of bringing all the geography data together, having the models in place, having the stakeholder, in this case the driver, in place, and coming with the right answers. So let's make the next step. The next step is coming back to our discussion. At the moment we are talking about the digital twin, we have building blocks. And what we hope is that we are as successful as Lego, because Lego has defined building blocks which are in use all over the world. They're all standardized, and you can all bring them together and work together. So these are the building blocks where we think we have to put, let's say, energy in. And they are related, first of all, to data, because data is bringing it all. And then, of course, we need data which has been integrated. And then you can talk about data fusion, about data modeling, and then predicting and simulating. And we have to be sure about the quality of the data. So we need, let's say, guidelines how to process. We need connectors, because the data has not been, let's say, brought together in one big environment. There are many places where there are, let's call it digital twins or data management environments, and we need to have access to them so that we can get that part of the data we want to have. And then at the end, visualization, the nicest part of the whole. And sometimes I'm thinking we are just talking about the visualization, but it's only number 6 of the blocks. And that all based on open standards. And I mean, that's the nice thing of Europe. When I started to work in Italy for the Joint Research Center, I was not aware that Europe is so important, because we have the power to bring a lot of things together, because we are able to discuss and to come with guidelines about data formats, about API services, about data catalogs. So that's the power of working together. Next slide, please. How far are we in Europe? Is this something just for the southern part of the Netherlands, what Ineke is going to show? Is this something just for the Via Appia, or Maurice is going to demonstrate? Or can we say we are making real progress in Europe? There will be, let's say, a base canvas, so that you can say we have the terrain models for the whole of Europe. We have the built environment for the whole of Europe. We have the vegetation, and an important one, we also have the subsurface. I can say that we are really making progress, that we have now definitions of all the Lego blocks. So we have the reports, they have been accepted. So it's really progressing. And I could also say that most of the countries in Europe are heavily investing in these digital twin Lego blocks, services, whatever you want to call it. It's not clear for everybody what it means, because again, they see the viewer and this is all behind. Also an important one, the applications are enormous. You can give so many examples of wonderful applications, and we have concentrated ourselves on the subsurface, because I think that's the most difficult one, because you cannot see it. It's the most difficult one because you don't have all the data. But I give you another example, so that's the next one.
1 minute.
In a little bit more than 1 minute. And this is another one which started earlier than we did. That's Singapore. And here you see a short introduction of Singapore. So you see the city of Singapore with all the data models for the buildings. We can make these buildings a little bit nicer. We have the semantics. We can ask information of these building blocks. So all the statistics, the cadastral applications are behind the digital twin. So we can look into the viewer. We can make calculations inside the digital twin, like surface or whatever, because it's all there. Let's say the digital twin is very accurate, of course, depending how you have started. And you can ask all kinds of questions. How many parking places are there? What's more important, how many parking places are free? So you need time as part of it. Given the time I got, Ineke, let's finalize this movie. And that brings me to, let's call it conclusions, because I still have nice examples, but I like to be in time. So the question is, of course, what has the digital twins to offer to the tourist industry or cultural heritage? Because that was your objective. And then I've put a very small video there of just a few seconds where you see the inner part of the city of Zwolle. That's because Peter was almost born in Zwolle. And what you see there is an example of crowd simulation, so that you see people walking there. And the question Karima was asking is, why are they walking in a certain direction? And immediately she said, Henk, can we also steer them so that we can have a better, let's say, use of the possibilities a city is offering? So that's what we want to offer. And then, of course, you have the questions. Can we have access to all the data? Do we know what kind of models we have and what we need? And how can we bring all this information to the stakeholders? We are just in the beginning from the perspective, I would say, of cultural heritage and tourism. I've showed you the car industry, the automotive industry. They are far already. So they are doing the things I hope we can also do in, let's say, in other applications. And my last slide would be the fact that we have two examples of all what I've tried to explain. And the first one is the example of Ineke, where we have tried to bring, let's say, the digital twin to the southern part of the Netherlands. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Henk. Thank you. So we will continue now with Ineke, because then we have time later on for some questions and discussion. So Tineke, the floor is yours. Your time will be till 10:55.
Thank you. I will share my screen again. You see my screen right now?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Henk, for the introduction, and Karima. So I want to zoom into our use case of the Parkstad in the south of the Netherlands, and how digital twin can help with the sustainable planning of cultural tourism. And I want to start right away with a short demonstration. And then I explain a little bit about the building blocks, and then we will do an extended demonstration. So our digital twin starts with a pop-up with an introduction of the project, an explanation on how to navigate into a three-dimensional environment and how to add layers. And as you can see, just like the example of Singapore, we have all the buildings, the cars, the trees to create a realistic digital twin of Heerlen. And you can also select different kind of data sets, and then a pop-up of information will come up, and then you can see this is a religious building, and a building besides it is a restaurant. This kind of information is very useful for a tourist. And I will tell you a little bit more about how we came to this digital twin, and then afterwards I will explain more about the functionalities. All right, I read a backup video, but to zoom in about our use case. So this is the area of Parkstad, and as Peter already introduced, there has been a lot of different historical and political time frames, starting with the Romans, the medieval period, the Mayan time, where Heerlen was the richest city of the Netherlands, the transition years, and a new era. And all these epochs have left their footprints. And we show them with the icons on this map, so you can see the horizontal spread. But you can also find them in a vertical layer in the subsoil, as a lot of archaeological experts would know. And our question is, how can we predict how a tourist will move? Is the tourist just interested in one epoch and is it combining like all the Roman icons, or is it traveling through time and want to combine different of those icons? And I want to touch quickly upon the tourism paradox. Because of the south of Limburg, we have a lot of cultural assets and ecological resources. That's why we attract a lot of tourism. It has an influence on the tourist attractions, so more restaurants and hotels will open up. However, this could lead to an unregulated flux of tourism, and that could have a negative effect on the cultural assets again. So we want to prevent that. So that led us to the research question that can digital technology provide tools to pave the road to sustainable results at local and regional level, which is supported by the locals and mitigate the insider versus outsider conflicts. And we tackled this with the digital twin. It's a spatial imaging tool for providing policymakers and planners. It's based on appropriate and evidence-based information, and it acquires an integrated perspective on the sustainable cultural tourism plan. And I got a quick overview of our digital twin for Parkstad, and on the left you can see what's coming in the middle what's digested, and on the right side the output. So to start with the input, we had a lot of open data, as Henk told us. That's the base of our digital twin. We put in tourism points of interest, where we expect tourists to go, and the historical epochs, and that we link that with the building data and the traffic data. And in the middle, we try to combine these data with simulation of tourism flows. And on the output, we have the viewer that I just showed you for a policymaker, and we also want to have different interfaces also for a tourist. And currently, we are discussing to also model the accessibility of those tourism points of interest and their routing. And to come back to those data and open data standards, luckily we have at the European Union a data strategy and a strategy for digital twins. We want to have high quality data, and we want to share that across sectors. And on the right side, you can see a couple of those examples of the sectors. And we can already find some tourism data inside of the sea regions, of the nature areas. But maybe there will be also a new sector just for tourism. And then I want to jump back to the demonstration and show you a bit more the functionalities in the digital twin. So you can see the same pop-up again. And on the left side, you see a couple of buttons. To start with the layer manager, here we connected our all open data via a data infrastructure, and here you can add an aerial picture. And you can also add your own data if you want to. And then if you add it, you can manage it in your layer manager. And if I activate it, you can see that the aerial picture would pop up. Here you can also deactivate other layers, or even hover above the legends. If you are only interested in cultural buildings, you can click that, and you can have a look at the routes, how accessible these buildings are. And as a Dutch person, I'm actually only interested in biking. So I will just add only the biking routes. The area picture makes it a little bit slow. And instead of zooming, we also included the functionality of bladwijs, we call in Dutch, point of interest, so you can easily navigate, and you can add also other locations. So I saved the location of the village of IJsselhoven. I'm interested in here, and I want to bike around as a tourist, or I want to create a new biking route as a policymaker. So then I think, oh, I will start here, and I make a quick roundabouts, and then I go back here. And then you can save it, and you can see it's 1 kilometer. And we included a story map as well, to tell the story behind all the historical data in this area of the Netherlands. So you can click around, and I will just go to the last one, because I will invite you to explore the digital twin yourself, so you can take your time to read it. This is the last one of Easy Travel, is a different interface that we want to connect to the digital twin, because what Henk explains, the digital twin is made of building blocks, and the interfaces I just show you is the very last part of it. And this is another interview that we think that a tourist would prefer. I also used it last year during my own holiday. This is a platform where you can start audio tours. And we made a beginning of an example of a tour for if you are interested in the Roman period. And here you can add information. I go back to my slides. Yeah, so this is another interface, and I think on the left you can see it's also multiple languages, not only Dutch language. And on the right side, this was an example we had created a couple of years ago. So this was my demonstration, and I want to invite you to explore the digital twin yourself and navigate through our three-dimensional environment.
Thank you very much, Ineke, for your presentation. If you can put the link in the chat, then people then are able to play with it. And I think Antonio will also share the link to others to play and see how they experience the digital twin, for instance, for Heerlen, Parkstad. Yeah.
Rima,
So
this
once
is
again,
dangerous because everybody's starting to play, and Maurice is giving his presentation. Poor guy.
oh, not now. Okay. Okay, thank you, Henk. We will not do that at the moment. After the presentation of Maurice, during the questions. Okay, once again, thank you very much, Ineke. Very clear presentation. You also illustrated very clear what we have been doing, working on together. So once again, thank you. There is a question in the chat, but we will come later on to the question during Q&R. So now I would like to give the floor to Maurice. Is Maurice still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
And
So
I
Maurice,
also have in the end of my presentation, I have a link to live demos. And so there will be like a competition between on which link people are going to click.
well, they're both very interesting. So your time is till 11:15. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. That's good to know. Right. Thank you first of all for inviting me. Thank you for having me. And Peter, thank you for your very generous introduction. Of course, I must say that I'm not the expert on the Via Appia Antica as a whole, but I have foremost studied the area near to Rome, the area between the 5th and the 6th mile from Rome. And although I think it was like 15 years ago that I also did some archaeological field surveys in the Salento region, back when I was an Erasmus student in Lecce, at the Lecce University in Salento in Puglia. Well, what I want to do today with this presentation is I want to share with you, well, the research that we have done for the Via Appia Antica from an archaeological perspective, and also how we brought our research eventually to a virtual museum, to a physical museum, but the museum is still open in the virtual world. And later on, I will share a link to it. There's one person that I in particularly want to highlight here, because I, of course, have not been doing this on my own. I did this research together with Henk, but also together with Rens and with Professor Erik Moorman from Radboud University, and also with my colleague Jesus Garcia Gonzalez. But a very important person also in this presentation, in this work, and especially in the museum exhibition, is Dr. Krien Klevis. Without her, the museum presentation was not possible. because she's an artist. She does artistic research, and we had this collaboration between archaeologists, digital experts, and art, which eventually resulted in the virtual museum application. Well, before I start, I would like to say a little bit more on the position where I currently work, because I currently work at the Netherlands eScience Center. And at our website, you will find academic research powered by pioneering software. So there's all kind of sensors, there's all kind of data now available. But to actually make sense of it, to make sense of the digital world, let's say, you need software. And not PhD-ware in the sense that you're writing your own script or whatsoever, but really sustainable software which can be reused. And I think that's also very essential. So you have the standards, of course, which are very important for digital twinning, but the software on top of that, and also having it in a sustainable way that it can be reused by others, is also quite important. And since we are the Netherlands eScience Center, we collaborate with all Dutch universities, but we are also interested in European collaboration. So please keep in touch with us. Maybe later on, we can be part of European consortia whatsoever, and we have been part of those consortia. So I work there as a senior research software engineer, but I'm still affiliated to the VU University. Right, let's go to Via Appia. The Via Appia Antica is an old Roman road. It was erected in 312 before Christ, and it runs from Rome all the way to Brindisi Stout. And I see there's a lot of Italians here, so this is nothing new for you. But this road had a really important military function. So the military would travel over it, had a really important commercial function to get the various cities connected. But it also had a really important funerary function, because what did the Romans do? They did not bury their dead inside of the city, but they buried their dead outside of the city. And the richer you are, the more prestigious you were, the bigger your funerary monument was. And especially near to the city of Rome, we find this really bombastic, great, large funerary monuments alongside the Via Appia, alongside the most important road back then. What we are confronted nowadays, when we walk through the Via Appia, is a really complex and layered landscape. So what you see over here are these kind of eaten apples, these cores, these ruins of where the funerary monuments were. And you see a lot of trees, and you see a lot of things have been added. You see people walking, sporting. There's also a mountain bike trail on top of the Via Appia, alongside of the Via Appia. But it has been changing over time. So just to give you an example over here. So here we see like these two burial mounds from the Roman period. And over here you see this, these slabs, these basalt slabs. And the interesting fun fact about this is that they look kind of authentic, and they look like a real Roman authentic, but they were put there in the 1960s for the Olympics to have like the marathon runners running on the Via Appia Antica. So we are really confronted with this complex and layered landscape. And as archaeologists, we were involved with archaeologists from Radboud University. We wanted to reconstruct how this road looked like in the Roman period and how it also changed over time. So basically, we're not the first one that have been doing this. So already Luigi Canina in the 19th century, he researched, he documented all the things alongside the Via Appia, and he attempted to make archaeological 3D reconstructions on how he believed that it might have looked like. We were thinking of doing exactly the same, but now using digital technology, because it is completely scattered and full with all these archaeological funerary monuments, bricks and archaeological artifacts scattered around. So we need an information system to integrate all these materials. So we thought, okay, let's create a digital twin. And as a digital twin, as a digital twin definition, we say a digital twin is a virtual representation of real-world objects or systems with the condition that the two communicate with each other. And the digital twin that we have been using is basically a virtual 3D representation of archaeological landscape, which integrates archaeological reconstruction, so basically how we believe that it might have looked like, historical images, and and that system is considered to be using digital twin technologies, but it's not per se really interactive, but it's a component, let's say. And as long as it is dynamic and can be integrated with other sensor data and models, it would form the basis for a digital twin. So I think it's good to make this distinction. So what Henk was showing, like this interaction with this car and the deer and all kind of sensor data, that's what I would consider a real digital twin. Whereas what we have been doing, we have been using digital twin components, which, since we are working according to certain software standards and data standards, it can be integrated in broader digital twin frameworks. Right. So let me go to the data collection. So we have this really complex layered landscape with all the various bricks and archaeological stuff scattered around. So what we basically did, we went there with a terrestrial LiDAR and we scanned the whole area. And this took only 20 minutes to scan it. And I was actually a bit disappointed by that, because we have been taking a lot of pictures to create 3D models, which took a lot of effort. Well, I must say that my students have been doing that. I attempted it myself, but then in the end, there's like more than 3,500 or 2,500 objects. So I let my students do the work. And then this car came and had like this a point cloud of data scanned really quickly. So a digital twin can, based on, depending on what you want to do with it, can be generated really quickly. We also did some excavation activities around certain archaeological funerary monuments of interest, which we all integrated into our digital twin. So we have 3D photogrammetry models of the trenches that were open. And since we have that open, we are able to communicate and relate them to each other in order to reconstruct how we believe that it might have looked like. So then you have the data collected, but then what you're going to do with it. And I have a video for this, because this is the first web application that we generated for academic research, basically. So we have this point cloud of this laser scan, and we had footprints of all the archaeological objects of interest, which are represented with the green and red colors. And this was actually, I mean, this data is more than it's a couple of gigabytes of data, which are now processed to our screen. So there's some software, some technology behind it in order to visualize the study area. And then, of course, you can ask questions to the data set. And for instance, where's all the marble? And then you get this thematic map on where it is. You can zoom it in and out. Just like the Singapore example, we can also perform measurements, which are very interesting for us, because these type of measurements, you cannot take them in the field, right? I mean, this archaeological funerary monument that you see over here is like 70 meters high. So it's very difficult to take these measurements, specific measurements of your interest while you are in the field. So having a digital representation of it makes a lot of sense, because then you can lift it, you can pick it up, you can turn it around, you can analyze it in order to generate 3D reconstructions with it. So let us focus on this particular archaeological monument that we see over here. So this is the Pyramide. It's known as the Pyramide. It's in front of the Villa dei Quintili, for those that are familiar in the study area. And it has a width of 12 meters, and it has 70 meters high. And what we basically wanted to do, so we have our digital representation. So what we basically wanted to do is generate a 3D reconstruction on how we believed that it might have looked like. Of course, what we have been doing is that we have been brushing it, cleaning it, looking for traces, because you must imagine that in the Roman period, this was full with travertine blocks and marble. But in the medieval period, all those blocks and things have been reused in a circular economy, let's say, in churches. So what we have been doing, we have been polishing, looking at, basically do an autopsy of the archaeological monument. And then we basically reconstructed, also through certain excavation activities that we did, reconstructed the base to be represented like this. And then since we had it in the 3D environment, we could play with the sun, a little bit of shade, in order to see minor differences in elevation, which then are indication for imprints where blocks have been. So here we are reconstructing the blocks. You can see them, they fit pretty well. We have the base, and then we are slightly building it up. And of course, every decision we got, by the way, here you see the anchors that we cleaned a bit earlier in this video. By the way, every step that we took, there's a database behind it. So these are all hypothetical steps. I mean, this is the most likely version of this archaeological funerary monument, but it can easily be that there's different options there, right? So in a way that we document everything, other insights are also possible. So around this particular funerary monument, we also found a lot of slabs with a 60-degree angle, which then allowed us to kind of generate this reconstruction of this pointy roof, having it as a pyramid. And it also made a lot of sense because next to the Villa dei Quintili, there's also a sanctuary for Isis. So it makes also a lot of sense to have that context around and then integrate all that knowledge and basically create the reconstruction in the way how we have it here. And by the way, for those that can see my webcam, you can also print the stuff. Yeah, then you have a 3D representation of it, well, just standing on your desk. So I also have like the version that's there nowadays. And I have the one, the reconstruction on how we believe that it might have looked like, the most likely one. Right. Let's move on, because the good news about what we have been doing is that everything, all the tools are open source. That means that you can actually reuse it. And it has been, the tools that we have developed have been reused as well. Here's an example also on how we can transparently publish our reconstruction. So we have like this matrix behind it with all the steps documented in a way that it is transparent. The tools that we developed are all being done as open source, and we actually had a couple of spin-offs of the project. So we have been working with the people that are responsible for the Dutch highway system. They're using the same visualization tools, but also we are capable of visualizing the whole of the Netherlands, the point cloud data, as raw data in just a browser. And that really opens the world for all kinds of applications that can be built upon that. Right, as I promised, I first told you now something about the academic research that we have been doing. So through these technologies, we are capable, through these digital twin technologies, we are capable of analyzing our study area in a way that we could never have been doing before. And it actually generated new insights and helped us really to generate a 3D reconstruction on the archaeological funerary monuments that were around. So I promised to tell you something about that, which I now did. And my next part of my presentation will be on the academic tools that we developed, on how we integrated it into a museum application, and also what our next step would be in relation to the people that are visiting the Via Appia nowadays. So during the project, I got in touch with this artist, Krien Klevis. And she basically has a fascination for the Via Appia Antica already for 20 years, or even longer. And she has been documented, she has been going through all the archives and basically collecting all the pictures and images that have been created over the last 300-400 years. So a lot of you probably know Piranesi. He already made this kind of fantasy drawings of the Via Appia and of ancient Rome. And through time, all kind of representations of this Via Appia have been generated. And what we have been doing in this project, in this museum exhibition, is that we wanted the museum visitors to really experience that. So we had our 3D scan of our study area, and we integrated all the historical images in our virtual digital twin, and then let the museum visitor actually click on it and interact with it and experience the changing time element of the Via Appia. So what we did, we have this room of 17 times by 5 meter. We put in the largest map that I ever created, 70 meters long map on the floor with all the archaeological objects that we scanned. we put in 6 projectors where the museum visitors could interact with through iPads, where they could click and take their own position and have this virtual time travel. And we also integrated a large picture on the north and southern part. And of course, we also printed it and hand painted them and put them in pedestals in the museum, so that people could actually experience how it changed, how it looks like nowadays, and also how we believe that it might have looked like in the past. And people were actually interacting with it. So here, for instance, this is one of the images of Piranesi. We integrated this into our 3D viewer, which then allowed us to basically, to have the museum visitor experience this changing time element. There's also pictures and material of Sophia Loren. Also, the Via Appia has been used in a lot of Italian movies like Acetone and all kind of other movies. And we basically integrated all these elements, all these pictures, all these historical images into our viewer. So you could actually experience also the changing time, to give the message to the people that are walking on the Via Appia in this cultural landscape, to have them really experience that they are part of this continuum of changing landscapes, and it is not static. It's not the tabula rasa. It's not like the Roman period is there. No, during the Roman period, it has changed also a lot over time. That's actually the main message that we wanted to give to the people. So the good news is that you can also watch it in VR if you want. We have like a web application, and if you have a VR kit, you can just go to it yourself. But just to give you an idea on how it then looked like, how it was in the museum. So people could actually click on it, get some information, some description of a particular funerary monument. So here you see this pyramid again, right? And then you could click on a certain image. An image, well, this is, for instance, from the 19th century. And you see this combination, we placed it in our digital twin, and people could then press on play, and then a video is shown. And actually, this video, it's the piece of art that the artistic researcher Krien Klevis has generated. And then basically, you can go from position A to position B. Also, the paths that you dive into it have been generated manually in such a way that you really experience how it looked over time. And of course, in this demo, I'm going through it really quickly. But of course, it's also a kind of experience on reading the text and getting an idea and getting the context. So let us move now to another funerary monument. By the way, you see a huge difference now, because in the first video that I showed, that was for researchers. So there's no eye candy. It's not made in such a way that it's really beautiful or whatsoever. Here we also integrated all kind of aerial photographs and things into each other to give a bit of a broader context. So here we see an image from the 18th century, for instance, where you see this element of changing time in the museum. This application is still available online. So I will share, after my presentation, I will share the link, and you can basically have a look at it and experience it yourself. I already posted it on the LinkedIn message announcement. Maybe people have already seen it. And the good news about all the things that we've been doing is that it's open source. So if you have your own point cloud, if you have your own pictures or whatsoever for the Basilicata area, you can reuse it. So feel free to contact us and to discuss that in detail. Right. So here's a URL to our website, which is of course great. I will put it in the chat later on. And now I want to go to the next step, because we started as archaeologists, and as archaeologists we attempted to reconstruct how it changed from the Roman period until now. And then we brought it to the museum, where the people could actually experience this changing time element. However, we are just at an intersection in time now, but we also want to look to the future. And what we actually want to do is that we want, as a future idea that we have, we want to have the people that are currently at the Via Appia really go to the positions of where these past image creators were, and then experience how they generated their image, and that they can contribute also to add an image of how they experience it nowadays. And I think this is very urgent because you will also, if you have like this monitoring tool, the digital twin, where people are adding their own perspectives all over the time, they can also experience this changing time element, which is really relevant nowadays in relation to climate change and all the challenges that we have in the future. So I believe that, so this is an idea that we have, and I hope that we can build upon the digital tools that we developed, the digital twin tools that we developed, that we can build it upon that, and that we can kind of have a future project for that. Right. Final thing that I want to mention here is a quote of the director of the eScience Center where I currently work. He said, because we are not only focused at Via Appia and archaeology, but the good news about working at the eScience Center is that I also have medical science colleagues working on digital twins of the human body, let's say, and I can actually relate to them, and I can share the methods and tools that they are developing, and I can have these interactions with them. And I don't think those interactions are possible at normal universities where you are just working in your silo. So we can have this interaction between the various experts that I have working around at me at the office. And if I reflect on we changed the way you work to the Via Appia, is that from an archaeological research perspective, we generated a new instrument for the archaeological domain, which opened up our idea on how the Via Appia looked like. It provided us with a new tool. And it is reusable for different domains. And if we look at the time traveling at the museum application, it's an immersive time traveling experience for museum visitors. And you can actually experience changing heritage landscapes. And that's actually the next step. That's the thing that we want to pursue as a follow-up of this project. Right, as a final slide, I of course need to thank all the contributors, in the project. So this work could not have been done without Radboud University, but also without the Soprintendenza in Rome, and of course the Archaeological Park. A special thank you for Simone Quilici as well. The Royal Dutch Institute, some funding from the Dutch Organization of Scientific Research, and of course the VU University and the eScience Center. So thank you. Here are my contact details. I will share the link to the interactive website in the chat.
Thank you very much, Maurice. Thank you. Very, very new insights regarding digital technology and in combination with data analytics, but also the perception of people. Thank you very much. So I would like now, according to the program, we go to the Q&R and later on some concluding remarks. And I saw a few questions. So Antonia, can you please help me? How many questions do we have in the chat? And are these people still here and can they ask the question?
Yes, yes. The question are written in the chat. We have already a couple of questions. I can read it. And then if the people want to intervene, that's also fine. So Joelle has a question regarding the digital twin. How long does it take to digitalize a city? Like the one that we had in the examples, so which amount of data, because it is huge, of course, and is there any mechanism to integrate existing data set that you can put into the digital twin? So this was one question.
Yeah, I think it's more the question also for Henk, because Henk gave a general overview. Henk, can you please reply to this question? And I cannot.
Yeah, the good thing, this question is always coming back because it's nice to see all these nice applications. But of course, the question is, how much money does it take? What kind of knowledge do you need to have? I remember when we started with Maurice, we were really the innovators. So it took us, let's say, years, more or less, to come as far as we came. So with the technology and the data availability of today, things are going much faster. So that's important to know. Then still, it always takes time. And it depends also heavily at this moment on the countries. In the Netherlands, we have now officially all the 3D data for all the cities of the Netherlands available. So the Dutch cadastre has taken that responsibility. And then it's much easier, of course, to take these steps. So yes, it's a serious investment in time and knowledge, because you need people with some expertise. And at the same moment, we have to take care that we educate people. So we always are happy to have young people in the office where we can cooperate, not just making the photographs of Maurice, because they were very young students, Maurice. They were 11 and 12 years old, I think.
No.
we had some.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
But what is perhaps even more important is the fact, is this an open environment? Can we add, let's say, data? Can we link the data so that it becomes an integrated environment, like Maurice was also telling? And what you have seen by Ineke, she was really adding information. So yes, at the moment we are using these open environment, the open standards, and even the APIs, which are the connectors, then that's not the problem at all. So that's new, that we have this open environment. So yes, it has to become an open system. And then, the final answer is you have to do it. So don't be afraid, but just start and call Maurice.
Or Henk. And Henk, so you cannot, of course, build the city one day, because even when you're focusing on one particular topic, like cultural heritage or cultural tourism, you are dealing with different kinds of data sets and different kinds of layers. And it's not only about data transformation. If you integrate all the different data sets on one specific subtopic, you are dealing with a lot of data, a lot of layers, but it's not only illustrating, visualizing the data. During the whole process, I saw also the interaction between the data in the system that creates also new insights and new perspectives. And that means we also, doing our own collecting data, discussing all the things, is that we also wanted to develop, to create new data, because based on the interfaces between the different data sets.
No, it's clear that this is an infrastructure. So we are developing an infrastructure which will make it possible, because that's our objective, our target, to give answers, to bring information to certain questions. And it depends on the questions, what kind of data or what kind of models you need. And at the end, it's a lifelong experience. So I started quite a while ago, and I'm already that old. But it's still fun to be involved.
Yeah, Maurice and Ineke, would you also like to reply on this question? And Peter is back. Maurice?
Well, I actually believe that having the data available according to standards, I mean, initially it always sounds a bit dull, right? That you need to standardize all your data and have all these frameworks. But without all these standards, this would never have been possible. I mean, back when I was a student, which is already a long time ago, there was already data available in the Netherlands on the elevation or on buildings or whatsoever. But that data was behind a paywall and you could not use it. And nowadays, all this data is open and it is available, and it is also structured in such a way, according to metadata standards, that you can integrate it into your digital twin, or in the digital twin of Ineke, or into my digital twin, or in whatsoever. So I think the fundamental are the standards. And of course, if I look to the Netherlands, we have like this institute which is called GeoNovum, which are doing a great work related to standards. But GeoNovum would have never been there without Inspire, without the European Union, without the European, the European initiative for standardization. So I think that's a very important addition to what Henk was already saying. And another thing that I would like to add is, of course, the software itself, to have that also standardized in a way that it is reusable for others.
And is that also an answer to the question of Francisca Buglione? She's asked
In
what
the
kind of
chat?
technology, what kind of technology did you use to recreate the 3D model for Viapia?
Oh yeah, so we have our data. Did you use a laser scanner? So it's a combination of laser scan of terrestrial lidar, which generated a point cloud. To visualize that point cloud, we use this JavaScript library, which is called Pottery. But before going into all the details about that, we all documented that in our research articles. And in the URL that I shared, you can actually find links to that. There's also links to GitHub repositories. Actually, we recently submitted a research article, which is now under review. And the moment that that one is published as of course as open access, then there will all the links to the repositories will be available there as well. But if you have specific details, you can contact me and I can point you to the right GitHub repositories that we generated for this project.
Thank you, Maurice. Ineke?
Yeah, I wanted to add a little bit about the question, how long does it take to digitalize or to make a digital twin? I think it's also very important to think about the user and the stakeholders that you want to approach and how you design your digital twin, because also Maurice showed us two versions, one for the researcher and one for a tourist to interact with. So I think that's also a good addition to take into account.
Thank you very much, Ineke. Peter, before we go to the conclusions or remarks. Peter? Peter, can you?
He's frozen. So
Frozen, okay.
I also
he's back,
had a
he's back.
question,
We cannot hear
actually.
you, Peter. We cannot hear
Yeah.
you.
No,
We
we
cannot
don't
hear
hear.
you. Can you unmute yourself?
Is
Yeah.
it better now? Yeah.
Yes.
You see, there is an interesting question. Of course, once we are talking about big data and standardization, of course, we may be inclined to apply all kinds of bureaucratic rules, and the EU has been very instrumental in developing standardization rules, which in a way makes sense. But on the other hand, I wonder whether in the longer run, and I challenge here also Henk a little bit, maybe, whether in the longer run we might not go for a different trajectory. Because you see, if nowadays we want to analyze the heterogeneity of written texts, for instance, we go to artificial intelligence, and in one way or another, even when we do not understand all the algorithms behind, we are able to synthesize many things, and in most of the cases, not so much nonsense comes out of it. Now, it might be that if written text can be somehow handled without too much of a standardization, but we just have written text even in different languages, and we are able to summarize written text through artificial intelligence, can't we develop an intelligent system? And there's a question to Henk, based on AI and AI determined content, through which the heterogeneity of different data in different spaces can also be tackled. That would be a major step forward, rather than going for a standardization, which by definition is enormous limitation, and in many cases also incorporates a high level of subjectivity.
Henk, very, very short. We have 3 minutes. We have 4 minutes to go. Very short.
I'm a believer in AI without any discussion. Together with Maurice, we had an AI PhD student, unbelievable. At the same moment, when I looked to his results, then when we would have given him a little bit more structure before he started to use these big data, then he would be much faster and coming with better answers. So I believe in the combination, Peter.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but that
Okay.
brings us back to what you said at the beginning, and maybe it's also the essence of a digital twin. A digital twin is not a standalone technology. It has to communicate with reality.
Exactly.
That type of communication between reality and let's say all kinds of digital devices is essential. If we just use it as a standalone thing, I'm
No,
sure
it's an infrastructure, an open infrastructure.
exactly.
Yeah.
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 That's why digital tools helps or show opportunities. Opportunities enhancing, for instance, in this context, cultural heritage management, as the question of Antonia, it illustrates it. But of course, it depends also on the development, as Peter mentioned, illustrated in the presentation, the development of multidimensional assessment models, like input-output. If you have the data sets, you can visualize that. And based on the interaction and also the development of open source data infrastructure, it creates a kind of a solid foundation for sustainable tourism planning, for instance. But of course, digital tools are supporting tools, but of course you need also a kind of infrastructure, a very solid standard infrastructure. And as Ineke also illustrated, there has to be a kind of framework, a kind of story, and integrating also the interactive experience. So the more the value system of the different stakeholders that are involved in this process, but also people that are using it. Because if we don't have the feedback, if we cannot illustrate also or extract data from experience, there is also no further development, Henk, I think, of the digital tool, because it's a process. The digital tool is a process. You integrate different kind of data set in a kind of context and framework, and based on the interaction or interface between the different dimensions and layers, you come up with new insights, and you need also to develop new or capture new data. And if I go to Maurice, also integrating or illustrating the importance of the different stakeholders, and also employing the real-time data, even when it's about the history experience, but you're also you create a kind of moment, I think. You create a kind of moment, and you extract also in that moment different experience, so the different data. And that's also what Ineke illustrated, and Maurice too. And I would like, are there any things that need to be asked in 1 minute? Did we forget something? Or are we missing things? I think it's very clear, also based on the presentations. But if you still have questions, you can still reach to Henk, Ineke, Peter, and Maurice. So I think we have to close because it's a webinar. We have to be on time. I would like to thank all the speakers. And if you have questions, just send us an email. Once again, thank you all for joining us. And Antonio, thank you for organizing this too. Thank you.
Thanks to all the speakers. That was great. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye
See
bye.
you at the final conference.
In when is the final in June?
5-6 June in Napoli, Italy.
Okay.
So we wait for
See
you.
you there.
Okay.
Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you.
Thanks to all,
Bye bye.
participants and
Ciao.
speakers.